Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
Prince William had expected a quiet summer dinner, not a rejection that would cut through Sandringham like a blade. The table had been arranged, the guest list deliberately kept small, and one chair had been reserved for Queen Camilla. But shortly before the gathering, a private message reached William. She would not attend. There was no scheduling conflict, no illness, and no polite excuse. Only a firm refusal that left the prince staring at an invitation he had believed she could never reject. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William had chosen Sandringham House. He wanted Catherine, King Charles, Camilla, and himself around one private table, free from courtiers, cameras, and ceremony. Sandringham, the monarch's private Norfolk estate, carried Christmas memories and Queen Elizabeth II's belief that family wounds should be faced away from palace machinery. For the future king, this was not a summons. It was an attempt to stop months of tension becoming permanent. The message destroyed that hope. Camilla had refused the invitation and instructed her office to tell the prince that she would not reconsider. Her answer arrived before final arrangements, leaving no believable way to describe her absence as a diary conflict. William read the page alone in a sitting room, lowered it, and asked the aide to repeat the wording. When the courtier confirmed that the queen consort had approved it, he fell silent. Catherine entered moments later and saw the place card in her husband's hand. He set it apart from the others and said the refusal felt designed to humiliate him. She understood. The dinner had been meant to rebuild trust between Charles, his wife, and his heir. But Camilla's decision revived old questions about loyalty, authority, and Diana's presence. Catherine watched William's shock harden into suspicion, knowing the wound was more dangerous than the missed meal. A confidential sentence beneath the refusal changed everything. Camilla had written that she would not sit at a table where her position could be privately questioned. William froze. Only a handful of people knew he intended to discuss boundaries between the royal households, meaning someone close to the planning had warned her. The invitation had been leaked before it could become reconciliation. William returned the place card to the table and ordered that the empty chair remain. Camilla had been expected, and everyone present would understand that she had consciously stayed away. But to understand why Camilla would reject an invitation carrying so much personal weight, William first had to confront what each person at that table believed they stood to lose. The refused dinner was never merely about food, courtesy, or a summer evening in Norfolk. Every name on William's guest list carried a private fear into Sandringham. Charles feared losing control of his fractured family. Catherine feared watching her husband retreat behind anger. Camilla feared being judged in a room shaped by memories she could never erase. And William feared that one final attempt at peace had exposed just how little trust remained between them. William knew his position was changing. He was taking a stronger role in family decisions. Yet Charles remained sovereign, the reigning monarch, with final authority over the royal household. The prince wanted clearer boundaries between the king's staff, Camilla's influence, and the future court he would one day lead with Catherine. The dinner had been designed to discuss those limits quietly, before private tension hardened into an open contest for control. Camilla saw something far darker. She had spent years standing beside Charles, surviving public judgment and endless comparisons with Diana. Now William's growing authority felt like a warning that the place she had fought to secure could slowly be reduced. A private invitation did not feel welcoming to her. It felt like being called into a room where she would have to defend her right to belong. Charles received her refusal while reviewing correspondence. He removed his glasses, folded the note once, and placed it beside his son's invitation. The king felt protective of his wife, but disappointment cut just as deeply. Camilla had not telephoned William. She had rejected him through her office, leaving the monarch trapped between the woman he loved and the heir he could not dismiss. Catherine found her husband standing near an open window at Anmer Hall. William repeated that he had invited Camilla as family, not as queen. She urged him not to turn humiliation into punishment, because she feared anger would push him into the same cold silence that had damaged earlier royal generations. The future queen understood that winning control could still mean losing the family. Camilla, meanwhile, told a trusted companion during a private conversation that the dinner was an ambush. She believed Catherine would remain calm, while William demanded concessions over household appointments, access to Charles, and future use of Sandringham. Her fear deepened because the prince had drafted a private proposal outlining informal boundaries between the two households. It was not a decree, a binding royal order, but its wording suggested decisions were already forming around her. The cruelest misunderstanding concerned Catherine. Camilla believed she had helped design the proposal. In truth, she had urged William to invite the queen consort before anything became final. Two women had been placed on opposing sides, without ever speaking directly. That fear had not begun with the Sandringham invitation. It had been forged weeks earlier, during a Windsor conversation that changed the meaning of every word William later sent. Weeks before Camilla rejected the dinner, a private conversation at Windsor Castle had already poisoned the ground beneath it. What began as a routine discussion about the summer calendar became a sharp dispute over access, influence, and the future shape of the monarchy. No voices carried beyond the room, yet one sentence from William left Camilla convinced that reconciliation was impossible. From that moment, every courteous gesture looked strategic, and every invitation felt like a trap. William entered the meeting, determined to make Charles's summer easier. Camilla sat beside the king, while two senior aides waited with schedules covering official engagements, private stays, and the monarch's growing workload. Windsor Castle, one of the sovereign's principal royal residences, often hosted discussions too sensitive for ordinary offices. The prince argued that fewer people should carry messages to his father because overlapping instructions were creating confusion and exhausting him. Charles listened carefully, knowing his son's concern was genuine, yet the subject was already moving toward dangerous ground. Camilla defended her household immediately. She believed her staff needed direct access because they understood Charles's moods, health, and daily needs better than distant officials. William saw the same access as a source of competing influence. What sounded like an administrative disagreement was really a battle over who could reach the king privately, shape his choices, and control the tone of family life. The point of no return arrived when Camilla requested that two senior members of her staff be included in every future Sandringham plan. William closed the folder before him and said, "Family time cannot become an extension of anyone's court." A court, in this context, meant the circle of staff and advisors surrounding a senior royal. The aides lowered their eyes. The queen consort remained still, straightened her papers, and asked whether he considered her household an intrusion. William answered that family and institution had to remain separate. He did not name Camilla, but she felt every word strike her directly. Charles watched his wife's expression tighten and his son's restraint begin to crack. Yet the king offered only a promise that the matter could be revisited later. His silence wounded them both. The prince heard avoidance. She heard permission for William to begin reducing her place. Camilla caught Charles in the corridor afterward and warned him during a private, unrecorded conversation that his heir was preparing a future where she would be honored ceremonially, but excluded personally. He dismissed the fear as emotion speaking, though he never told William what she had confessed. That silence allowed suspicion to grow unchecked. When the Sandringham invitation arrived weeks later, William believed he was repairing the damage. Camilla believed he was continuing the confrontation without aids, leaving her alone against him and Catherine. The dinner was no longer a peace offering. In her mind, it was the second act of the same threat. With the invitation rejected and the Windsor wound still raw, William abandoned formal messages and walked into the confrontation Camilla had been preparing herself to face. William did not send another letter. He did not ask an equerry to soften the moment or permit competing offices to bury it beneath protocol. He went directly to Camilla. Behind a closed door, with no cameras and no prepared statements, the future king asked one brutally simple question. Why could she not refuse him herself? Her answer transformed a painful family misunderstanding into a confrontation over power, memory, and whether either of them had ever truly trusted the other. William left his prepared notes in the car and ordered the aides to remain outside. An equerry was a royal officer who handled schedules, messages, and personal arrangements, but the prince wanted no official voice between them now. He had come as Charles's son, Camilla's stepson, and the man who would one day inherit responsibility for the monarchy. She expected pressure. She placed his invitation on the table and underlined the words, "Private family dinner," convinced that the warmth of that phrase concealed a challenge waiting after the meal. Camilla watched him enter and offered tea. William declined. He remained standing until she asked him to sit, then rested one hand against the back of the chair. "Why couldn't you tell me yourself?" he asked. The queen consort did not look away. "Because you did not invite me to dinner," she answered. "You invited me to defend my place." William stared at her, stunned by the accusation. He insisted that Sandringham had been meant as a path back from Windsor, not an ambush. The prince admitted that household boundaries would have been discussed, but no final decision existed. His control began to slip when Camilla suggested Catherine would have smiled politely while helping him pressure her into surrendering authority. Camilla's anger carried an older pain. She told William that she had spent years entering rooms where Diana's absence felt stronger than her own presence. Sandringham held family memories she could never replace, and she refused to sit through an evening where courtesy disguised judgment. The future king answered that he had not invited her to compete with his mother. She replied that he did not need to say Diana's name for the comparison to fill the room. William then asked how she knew about his proposal. Camilla hesitated before admitting, in their private conversation, that someone close to the planning believed she deserved a warning. She refused to identify the source. That silence confirmed the betrayal. Someone within his trusted circle had carried confidential details to her before the invitation arrived. Camilla finally admitted the refusal had also been aimed at Charles. She wanted the king to feel the cost of remaining silent at Windsor and force him to choose between his wife, his son, or continued avoidance. William rose and said his father would now receive the proposal in full. The door closed without reconciliation, and what had begun as an empty place at dinner now moved toward the one person whose silence had allowed the conflict to grow. For weeks, Charles had hoped the tension would dissolve if he gave it no oxygen. But silence had not protected the family. It had encouraged both sides to believe he might eventually choose them. Now William placed the proposed boundaries before him, while Camilla's refusal remained folded beside the invitation. The king could no longer hide behind patience. Whatever he decided would define not only one summer dinner, but the balance between his marriage and the monarchy's future. Charles opened the document alone and read it twice. William wanted a clearer separation between the king's official household, Camilla's personal staff, and the Wales household, the team supporting the prince and Catherine in their duties. He also wanted Sandringham gatherings arranged through one family channel instead of several offices carrying rival instructions. The proposal sounded practical, but the monarch understood why it mattered. Too many private voices were reaching him, and every crossed message was turning family concern into a struggle for influence. Charles held the only authority capable of settling it. As sovereign and private owner of Sandringham, he could accept William's framework, reject it, or rewrite every line. Yet no choice would remain administrative. Supporting his son could look like an attack on Camilla. Protecting his wife could make the heir appear powerless before the court he would one day inherit. The king circled the sentence about protecting family spaces from institutional rivalry. An institution, here, meant the system of offices and advisors operating around each royal. He set down his pen and pressed his fingers against his forehead. William's wording was controlled, but Charles could hear the pain beneath it. His son was no longer asking only for order. He was asking his father to stop avoiding the fracture. Camilla entered carrying her own anger. Charles asked whether she would attend the dinner if the proposal were removed from discussion. She answered that the document was no longer the true problem. William believed he had the right to define her place, and that belief had already wounded her. When the king admitted that his son's concerns were not entirely unreasonable, she looked at him as though the betrayal had finally become complete. Charles did not retreat. He told Camilla that rejecting William through an office had been needlessly harsh. She answered that his silence at Windsor had been harsher, because he had left her alone while the prince challenged the reach of her household. The monarch could deny neither accusation. The circulation record then exposed the hidden hand. One of Charles's long-serving advisors had privately warned Camilla about William's proposal, believing her access was under threat. The king removed that advisor from all future family planning and ordered both households to stop circulating private documents without permission. But Charles made one final decision. The Sandringham dinner would proceed, and no one would pretend Camilla's absence meant nothing. As the king moved against the machinery that had inflamed the dispute, the family still had to face the dinner itself, and the silence of the chair Camilla had refused to occupy. The Sandringham dinner went ahead, but it did not feel like an act of defiance. It felt like a family gathering after someone had chosen to leave. Charles arrived, knowing his wife's chair would remain empty. Catherine entered determined to prevent William's disappointment from becoming anger. And William, who had arranged the evening as a gesture of peace, found himself confronting the humiliating proof that royal power could command attendance almost anywhere, except at his own family table. William rejected every suggestion to invite more relatives and hide the absence inside a larger gathering. Only Catherine, Charles, and the minimal household staff required to serve the meal would join him. A royal household meant the employees who managed a senior figure's official and private duties, but even their presence was kept distant. The small guest list mattered because this dinner had never been intended as ceremony. It was meant to restore trust between four people whose private divisions were beginning to weaken the family around the king. The empty place remained untouched. Camilla's name card stood beside her glass, and every part of the setting waited exactly as planned. William refused to remove it. Erasing the chair would have allowed them to reduce her refusal to a simple calendar change, when all three knew it was a deliberate decision carrying anger, fear, and accusation. Charles stopped when he reached his wife's place. He rested one hand on the chair for a moment before sitting down, saying nothing. Catherine watched the king's composure give way to unmistakable sadness. The monarch was not looking at a symbol of rebellion. He was looking at the space where the woman he loved should have been. William heard the question during the first course. Charles asked whether leaving the setting in place had truly been necessary. The prince answered that removing it would turn Camilla's choice into an administrative detail. His voice remained controlled, but the hurt beneath every word was impossible to miss. The king stiffened, and his son's disappointment edged dangerously close to accusation. Catherine reached across and rested her hand over her husband's wrist. She urged both men not to conduct another trial while Camilla was absent and unable to answer. Her intervention stopped William from pushing harder and Charles from defending his wife out of wounded instinct. One more bitter sentence could have broken what little trust remained. Charles then revealed, through the private conversation Camilla had held with him after Windsor, that she feared William would erase her from family life after becoming monarch. The prince stared at his father, shaken. He had expected resistance over staff and access, not terror of personal banishment. William finally admitted that he had spoken to Camilla through rules and schedules, because emotional honesty felt impossible. His silence had allowed her to imagine the cruelest future. After dinner, Catherine told him that no document or messenger could repair that damage. Someone had to approach Camilla without rank, strategy, or an audience. That realization shifted the balance, because the next approach would not come from the king or the heir, but from the one person Camilla had wrongly believed was standing against her. Catherine did not arrive carrying William's proposal, Charles's instructions, or a demand that Camilla apologize. She came alone. There were no aides in the room, and no official purpose recorded in the diary. For the first time since the Windsor dispute, two women who had been positioned as silent rivals faced each other without their husbands between them. What followed did not erase the past, but it changed the fear that had driven Camilla away from Sandringham. Catherine had contacted Camilla directly after the painful dinner and asked for 20 minutes in private. She made clear that William did not know exactly what she intended to say, and that the meeting was not another stage of his confrontation. The royal diary, the official schedule recording a family member's duties and meetings, contained no entry for it. That secrecy mattered because neither woman wanted staff, competing households, or Charles interpreting their words before they had spoken them. Camilla agreed reluctantly. She expected Catherine to defend her husband's proposal or persuade her to perform a public gesture of unity. Refusing another personal approach, however, would deepen the fracture and leave Charles carrying even more pain between his wife and son. The Queen Consort accepted, though she prepared herself for pressure disguised as kindness. Catherine entered without a folder and sat opposite Camilla before tea could be served. When a staff member approached, the Queen dismissed them with a quiet instruction. The door closed. No official machinery remained between them, and neither woman could hide behind messages written by someone else. Catherine spoke first. She told Camilla that she had not designed the Sandringham dinner as an ambush and had urged William to delay every final decision until all four of them could speak honestly. The princess watched the older woman's expression change before saying, "You feared I wanted you cornered. I was trying to make certain you were included." Camilla's composure finally weakened. During that private conversation, she confessed that Catherine's closeness to William and confidence in public made her feel the future court was already forming without her. A future court meant the family, advisors, and household structure expected to surround the next monarch. She feared becoming a leftover from Charles's reign, respected at ceremonies, yet quietly unwelcome inside the family. Catherine offered reassurance, but not surrender. She promised Camilla would not be erased, while insisting that rival offices could not continue exhausting Charles or placing staff loyalty above personal trust. Compassion, she said, did not require pretending the boundaries were unnecessary. Camilla remained silent before admitting she should have telephoned William herself. She acknowledged that refusing through her office had been intended to wound him and agreed to send a personal message accepting responsibility. The deeper dispute remained, but the cruelty surrounding it had finally been named. That message reached William just as news of the Queen's absence escaped Sandringham. The family had finally found the beginning of honesty. But outside the palace walls, one missing dinner guest was about to become a national symbol of royal division. By the following morning, the private dinner was private no longer. The absence of Camilla had escaped the estate and hardened into a story of royal rebellion. Broadcasters debated whether William had challenged the Queen. Commentators asked whether Charles had lost control of his household. Yet one image captured the public imagination more powerfully than every panel discussion. A carefully arranged Sandringham table with one untouched chair, now transformed from a family wound into a national verdict. News spread with brutal speed. Camilla had declined a private gathering hosted by William and attended by Charles and Catherine, and every account assigned a different meaning to the refusal. Some framed the Queen Consort as a woman resisting humiliation. Others described the prince as the future monarch finally asserting control. The dispute mattered because it no longer concerned one missed meal. It raised questions about authority, family loyalty, and whether the present reign could peacefully make room for the next. Charles rejected the first response drafted by palace communications staff. A communications office is the royal team responsible for public statements and media handling, and its advisors wanted to call the absence a scheduling matter. The king knew that was false. William agreed. He refused to let a fabricated excuse bury the very honesty Catherine had struggled to create. The headlines became impossible to contain. One national newspaper printed Sandringham's gates beneath the words, "The Queen Who Said No." A smaller caption asked whether a single rejected dinner had exposed the monarchy's deepest fracture. Near Buckingham Palace, tourists and royal watchers gathered while broadcasters reported live. One woman raised a handwritten sign declaring, "A family must speak before it can heal." The message spread quickly because it offered sympathy without choosing a villain. William watched the coverage without sound when Camilla's handwritten note reached him. He opened it slowly. Through her personal message, she admitted that refusing the invitation had been meant to protect her dignity, but had instead caused deliberate pain. The Queen apologized for using her office when the moment required her own voice. The prince read the final lines twice, recognizing that the apology did not erase their disagreement, but it did end the cruel silence around it. Advisors urged William to arrange an immediate photograph with Camilla. He refused. A staged display of unity would repeat the same pattern that had damaged them: appearance before truth, ceremony before trust. Charles supported him and authorized an unusually honest palace statement confirming that the gathering had occurred, that his wife had not attended, and that private conversations were continuing. William then wrote a reply. It contained no agenda, no household proposal, and no demand for public performance. Only a date, a room, and the possibility of beginning again. The public had seen the fracture, but the final meaning of the moment would be decided away from headlines, when William and Camilla chose what kind of family they were prepared to become. The crisis did not end with a sweeping declaration or a carefully staged embrace. It ended with a smaller table. Days after the rejected Sandringham gathering, William and Camilla met again, with no advisors, no written proposals, and no expectation that decades of complicated history could disappear in one evening. What mattered was simpler and harder. Each had to accept the wound they had caused, the fear they had concealed, and the future they could no longer avoid sharing. William's second invitation contained no hidden agenda. It mentioned no household structure, royal duty, or institutional boundary. Instead, the prince asked Camilla to join him for a private meal in a smaller room at Sandringham, the monarch's privately owned Norfolk estate. Charles stayed away because his presence had previously encouraged both sides to seek his protection. Catherine also stepped back, knowing the false belief that she had helped corner the queen consort had finally been corrected. This meeting belonged to the two people who had caused the wound. Camilla arrived and found only two places waiting. William rose but offered no ceremonial greeting. She placed her handbag beside the chair, looked directly at him and said, "I should have come the first time." He answered, "I should have made it safe for you to believe you could." In that exchange, the anger surrounding the empty chair finally gave way to something more honest. William apologized for allowing discussions about succession, the planned transfer of responsibility to the next monarch, to sound like judgments on Camilla's right to belong. The future king admitted that structure had become a shield whenever personal history felt too painful. She apologized for weaponizing her absence, and for assuming Catherine had joined a plan to isolate her. Neither attempted to excuse the damage. Camilla accepted that clearer boundaries between royal households were necessary. William agreed that she must be consulted directly before decisions affecting her position began taking shape. The Queen acknowledged that his future responsibilities required real authority. He acknowledged that authority could never become emotional exclusion. Neither side fully won, and that was precisely why the understanding could survive. Charles later received them together. William explained the agreement during a private conversation, while Camilla confirmed that she had accepted it freely. The king listened with visible relief, and thanked them without rewriting the conflict or pretending it had been harmless. For once, the monarch was not being forced to choose between his wife and his heir. The refusal had exposed Camilla's fear of being erased. William's shock had exposed his instinct to hide pain behind control. The empty chair became a warning that titles, offices, and protocol, the formal rules guiding royal conduct, could organize a monarchy but could never heal a family. And so the chair that once represented rejection became something far more lasting. The proof that even inside a monarchy built on silence, peace begins only when someone finally speaks. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.